All right, let's look at another sign. Let me start off by telling you where I found these two things. I found them posted. I was actually waiting for the subway on the actual subway platform. And in order to prevent people from sort of jumping into or falling into where the tracks would be, if this would be the tracks where the subway cars would be going, maybe this one's going this way and this one's going this way. There's these doors that are always there. There's sort of like these glass barriers, and there's these little doors that would open every time the subway comes in order for allow people to obviously to get on and off the subway. So there's sort of a barrier blocking the subway tracks from the actual subway platform. If this was the platform where you would get on and off the subway, there's these doors that prevent people from jumping into or falling into the tracks. And there was this one here was on one of the doors, and this one here was on one of the doors. I think that information will help you understand what's being said here. Okay, so imagine you're a foreigner and you're waiting for the train at this platform, ready to get on the train. And you look at the sign, you say, okay, I don't know what this means. I'm going to look up these words individually in the dictionary. So you look up this first word here, 발빠짐, and you can't find it. And that's something that's interesting to me about this sign and some other signs that I've talked about before, is that they actually include things in here that they look like they're words, but they're not even words. This is actually two words and then a little grammatical thing added to the verb, which you could look that up in the dictionary. But just look this thing up in the dictionary like this, and you wouldn't find it. And the reason why is 발 is a word on its own that means foot or feet. And this thing here, this is the verb 빠지다. 빠지다. And that sort of means to fall into. One common place where you would see this is maybe in the phrase 사랑에 빠지다. And that means to fall in love. And well, what this is saying is obviously is your feet or your foot could possibly fall into this little space that's in between the platform and the subway cars. Well, what's the purpose of this letter here? Well, this actually causes this verb to become a noun. So if I take off ta, which now I'm just left with the stem of just 빠지, and I put this here, that sort of causes this to become a noun. I talk about how that would work in lesson 29. And you can see this down here, is you can change verbs or adjectives into noun by adding this to them. Now, the reason why we need to turn this into a noun is because this is commonly added to signs to indicate that you should be careful of, I'll even write that down, careful of or cautious of whatever the noun is before it. So what this is saying is, well, be careful or caution of your feet falling in. And obviously they're going to be talking about where are they falling in, where they're going to fall in between this space in between the platform and the cars. This description down here is basically explaining kind of what I just said, but let's break it down. And this thing here is interesting. I'm going to talk about this one first. 열차 just means train. But they also include this. And what they're saying is 전동 열차. And you really don't even need this 전동. And I asked a Korean person if they would ever say 전동 열차, and they would said, I would never say that, but I wouldn't say that's a difficult thing to say. It's just something I would never say, but every time I see it, I obviously know what it means. Now, again, this would just mean the train itself. You could use this word if you wanted to, and signs sort of tend to use more difficult words in their explanations. Another thing that you could use that would, honestly, I would more commonly use, 전철. That would also mean subway. You could also say 지하철, and that specifically means like a subway that goes underground. This would just generally mean any train, any subway metro train, where this would specifically mean something that goes underground because 지하 means underground. The Hanja character for 전 is this one here, and it looks something like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, and then there's a little box down here, and then it goes like that. And this is the character that means electricity. Electricity. And dong, the Hanja character for that looks like this, and there's a little box here. Close that box. and there's another line here, and it'll go like that. All right, looks something like that. Now this character means movement. And if you put these two words together, what just Cheondong means in general is sort of like an electrically powered thing. It doesn't have to be a train that comes after it, but in this case, it is a train. But you could think of it something else that would be electrically powered, something that is moved or that moves by electricity. And that's sort of why this thing is added here. Well, it's a train. Okay, it is a train. Well, what type of train is it? It's not a train that's run on steam, and I can't think of trains that would run on steam anymore. But this is an electrical train, and that's obviously usually what subways are in this case. Now, I'm talking about this train. Now, what I have here is I have the verb tada, and nun is added to it, and that allows me to describe an upcoming noun. So what I have is ta nun, and whatever is coming up here, that's being described by tada. Now, what I have here, this quote, this means place. This means place. Tada means to get on or to ride or to take, and specifically in this case, because we're talking about subways, it's, getting on a train. So what 타는 곳 means is the place where you get on the train. And you could even simplify that to what I have described up here. That's just a platform. The place where you're standing to wait on to literally do the action of hopping on or stepping on the train is called the platform. And what I have before 타는 곳 is 와, and that just means and. So it's saying that the train and the platform, and then it's going to sort of describe what's happening with these two things here. Sai is put after a noun like this to refer to the space in between those two nouns. So I'll just write this down as space. Another example where you could do that is maybe if you wanted to say, for example, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, maybe if you wanted to say 하늘, which means the sky, and then again you wanted to put this and, which is the same thing that you see here, but just because this ends in a consonant, I use kwa, not ba. This ends in a vowel. And I could put 땅, which means land, and then again I could put sai after that. And what this is doing is just saying the space between the sky and the land. And what this is saying in our sign is it's the space between the train and the platform. And it's using this adjective 넓다. The base form of this adjective is 넓다. And I love this adjective in Korean. Generally, it just means big. But big can also translate to 크다. Now, 크다 is used more specifically like with almost things that are big in the terms of height. Like, for example, I would be bigger than somebody, or this car is bigger than somebody. Whereas 넓다 is sort of mainly used for spaces. So, for example, if you're talking about how big your house might be or how big your apartment might be, you generally wouldn't use 크다 unless you're actually talking about sort of the outside, structure of the house, where you'd use 넓다 to talk more about the square footage or the space inside the house is big. So you could translate this to big, I guess, if you wanted to. Another way to describe it is, or to translate this, is to sort of say broad or something like that. So anyways, what this is saying, this thing down here is saying that the space between the platform and the trains is really, really big. Now, if we look down here, this was posted on the same place but on the other door. This adjective here sort of means, it's one of those words that I find it always difficult to translate into English, but it's an adjective that sort of is used to indicate that if something is done too much or too zealously, or to a point that really it shouldn't really be done that hard or that intense. You can sometimes see it, for example, in 무리하게, and then you could sort of say something 하지마 to indicate that you shouldn't do something too much or too intense. So, for example, I could say 무리하게, maybe 운동, which means exercise, and then the verb form of that followed by me saying don't. So this would say 무리하게 운동하지마, and again, it's basically telling you not to exercise, but specifically not to exercise in too intensely or too overzealously or something like that. Now, what this is describing, I don't have the adverb form of 무리하다, I have the adjective form of 무리하다, where I'm describing this thing. Now, 승 means to get on something, as in to get on a horse, or to get on a car, or to get on a train. And 하 means to get off a train, or to get off a horse, or to get off something like that. And 차 means car. And in general, this officially means getting on and or off something. And I'll just say train in this case because we're talking about a train. And 금지, very similar to what I have up here, 주의, is very commonly seen on signs placed after nouns, and this is a noun here, to indicate what shouldn't be done. In this case, it's saying be careful of, whereas 금지 is saying you should not be doing this. So I'll just say should, or should not, or don't, should not do. And you specifically should not be doing whatever's before it. So because we know this word 무리하다, or 무리한, or 무리하게, sort of means to do something too intensely, or to a point where it's too much, or to a point that it's sort of overzealous. What it's saying is, don't get on the train like too intensely, or too overzealously, or something like that. And you can think, well, how can somebody do that? Well, if you've ever been in Seoul, you can understand exactly what I mean. Or if you've ever been to like a major metropolis city, you might be able to understand, because sometimes when those doors open, it's pretty crazy, because there's tons of people just trying to rush in, and the doors might be just closing, and somebody might be sprinting over and just trying to jump in, and maybe like their hand gets stuck in the thing because they didn't just make it, or their foot gets stuck. Or maybe it might even be the train's completely full and people are just trying to ram themselves in there, when really they should just wait for the next train that's going to come in a minute anyways. So it's sort of referring to all of those situations of, this getting on the train too intensely, or overzealously, or too much, in a certain way that you really shouldn't go past a certain extreme. You shouldn't be doing that. Now down here, what it's saying is this 사고 means accident, and 발생 means sort of to arise, or to happen, or something like that. And 발생하다 means to arise or to happen, and I guess 발생, the noun, just means the arising of this, or the happening of this accident. And it's a comma, so really what's going to be talking about this is this thing over here, and this is also going to be talked about here, but I'll just tell you what this is saying. This one in means cause, and 되다 means to be. This is just 되다, and it's in the formal respect 됩니다. And this means to be, or sort of to become, or something like that. So what it's saying is, if you do this crazy getting on the subway train, sort of to a point where you shouldn't be getting on the subway train, if you do that, that's the cause of accidents happening. And what this thing here is saying, well, 열차, we already saw that same noun up here to mean train. So again, this means train. And 지연 means sort of, or 지연되다 means to be delayed. And 지연 would be the noun form of to be delayed, which I guess would just be a delay. So what this is, sort of, a train delay. And again, this overzealously getting on the trains, well, that's the cause of accidents happening, and it's also the cause of the train being delayed. So you can sort of see why these two things would be posted here. Obviously, you want to say, well, of course, watch out for your feet as you're stepping over, because the space might be, big or wide, or whatever you want to call this. And don't hop on the train too overzealously, because that's the cause. That action is the cause of accidents happening, and it's also the cause of trains being delayed. Well, that was fun. I hope you learned a lot.